This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
All right, I'd like to call to order the Public Safety Building Committee meeting on Monday, September 25th at 4:33 p.m. This meeting is audio and video recorded. Also contains a video conference with Janet Flamenda and Amy Dunlap. Hopefully I pronounced those last name right. The principals at HKT Architects. Do we want to start off with review of the agenda, review of the minutes, or do we want to go right to?
I would suggest we proceed right away with Janet.
I second that.
Yep.
Okay.
Are they in with us now?
Yeah, they should be. Can you hear us?
Hello.
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yep.
Now we can, yeah.
Janet, did I pronounce your name properly, your last name properly?
I didn't even listen. I didn't know the word Flamenda.
Okay, I did that. Sounds like I did.
Just like it's spelled, yeah. You can tell Ellis Island had a hand in that name. I think it began with a Z, from what I understand.
So Janet has a PowerPoint that she wants to show. I don't know if, Janet, if you can share your screen.
Yeah, you're on share. Yep. You're able to. Yeah.
Let's see. This is. Okay, you can see it. And you see the whole screen?
Yep.
Okay. So today we have an agenda of reviewing the programming process, which included our site visit. There's a summary document that has been sent to you, and we're going to talk about cost a little bit on that one. We're going to go through the schedule that we sent in advance, so that you all are familiar and can make comments on it because it was draft. We're going to talk a little bit about the site assessment process, which is coming up, and the preparation of the matrix for evaluating the 3 sites. And then the last 2 items are town efforts and community outreach. I'm not going to really talk about them. I just have them as a placeholder because those are ongoing efforts by the town that we want to keep in our minds. So many of you were at, or for at least some of them, or all of it, the space needs assessment process. We had on-site meetings in both departments. We did use the space needs questionnaire that everyone filled out for us. We did our field observations, got tours of the buildings, which was very, very helpful. And we had interviews with the personnel. We did the police department first, and then we did the shared spaces, and then the fire department personnel. And many of you were there for bits and pieces or all of it, so you have a flavor for that. We then analyzed the functional needs and then created the programming summary, which has been reviewed. So that's that is the big focus of today's events. So the police summary identified 4 areas plus a parking and other, but administration work spaces, operations space, staff support, and detention as the 4 primary areas, and parking and other is no small space, but we pulled it until the end.
Yes.
So
can you make that a little bit bigger, Janet, so that we can see that?
Yeah, I am going to. That's why each one of them is bigger, and then I have an opportunity to even enlarge it even bigger here for you. So so the administration is, and you'll see each one of these, I've highlighted the number at the bottom, which is the gross number. So we do, as I explained to everybody, we do the net square feet, which is inside the walls of the space. If a room's 10 by 10, it would be 100 square feet of program space. We add all those together, which is this number, and then we add our grossing and circulation adjustment factors, and they vary from space to space. And those 2 bays make up the interior walls, the exterior walls, the corridors, things like that, things that aren't accounted for in actual space sheets. So you go from 1,500, let me blow that up again. Hold on. Let me show you what it is. So these are the spaces. You go from 1,582 square feet net to 2,274 square feet when you add in all those gross factors. So there's almost 700 square feet of adjustments to that. And that again takes in all those other things. Exterior walls are now 16 to 18 inches thick. Interior walls are 6 inches or bigger, depending on the use of them, and corridor widths. You have to take into all that account, and all of the internal corridors within a space that accounts for all that stuff. So if you're going from one space to another, there's a space that's not assigned to someone that you needed to actually move through a space, that's all accounted for in those gross area adjustments. So I wonder if you want to talk individually about any of the spaces. Do you have questions about any, how we split them up, or do you want me to go through them all?
This is current, right? That's what,
No, that's not current.
that's the
their
projected.
results. Jana, I have a question for you. How did you come up with the actual square footage? What was that based on?
It's based
Per
on
room.
experience. It's
Yep.
based on layouts of furniture. We have diagrams of different kinds of office spaces that we do that comment. When I asked you, like for you, how many people might be meeting, and we talked about a couple of people maybe in the room, so we'd have a desk, but we'd also have a small table and chairs. We'd have some file cabinets, bookshelves, things like that. So for rooms like that. And then when you get to things like a detective office where you have multiple people in a room, we do those layouts internally. We have a lot we use as experience. So it's based on what you asked us and what we have. So I don't use exact spaces, but I take those images and I redraw them, sketch for myself. And that's how we come up with those. So those are based on experience, primarily all the other buildings we've done, and then your comments. Is that helpful?
Yes. Jana, is there any way, we're just having a difficult time hearing you from, is it, I don't know if it's perhaps your headphones, do you have the means to, we could hear Amy very well.
Is this any better?
Keep talking.
Yeah, keep talking, I guess, I don't know.
Is that any better?
It just isn't always clear. I mean, it's kind of muffled sometimes, but maybe.
Okay, well, I'll try to, nothing that accuses me of being too quiet. This is awful.
It's a large room and we're kind of dispersed a little bit, that's all.
I'll make sure. I'll make sure I've got my microphone right out my mouth. So those are the spaces, and in what we include in administration for police includes things like the detective's offices, records and archive storage, things like that. We don't disconnect them from administration, usually because they are interconnected somehow in the plan, and we like to keep them close to each other in programming, but that doesn't mean that they'll end up in the plan next door to each other. It just means from a big point of view of major groups, that's how we see them. The next one is operations, and that is the 2,294 square feet of space. And that includes, and let me blow that one up for you. So that includes the sergeants that were projected, the operations room, roll call room. This is an all-encompassing space for the department. And it doesn't mean there's going to be 16 people in that room at one time because of the different shifts, but it's set up for 4 people and guests, 4 computers, mailboxes for all the patrol officers, a conference table, things like that. And then there's a future position for a training officer. There's a technology lab. I mean, it is changing. We're creating rooms for all the body cam storage and radio storage and all that to be stored and charged and looked at. And so we're providing rooms like that now that we haven't in the past. The police have asked for a decontamination room with a shower, toilet, and changing area based on what's happened in COVID. It's possible that we'll be able to somehow manage to interconnect that with the fire department, but not necessarily, and certainly maybe not where they want it to be. So we've included it's a very small room in any case, but so that they can clean up. Right now, I think people tend to go home to do this, and we don't really want them taking any contaminants home with them. We want them to stay at the station, get rid of that, so we've added that space. There's uniform storage. PPE stands for personal protective equipment storage, all the stuff they carry in their, even gloves and, all that kind of stuff that is part of a normal. These always had spaces before, but now there are designated closets for those and medical supplies. There's a process room lab, a small cubicle that they have things, workarounds for that right now. So it's not a huge room, but it's a small unit for that. There's the property rooms for the evidence. We have separate valuable evidence and evidence prep areas that are required. There's an armory and weapons room, and that has a safe. So those are all things asked for or talked about, discussed, and now split into the individual places. Again, there's the adjustments for the gross areas, and that's the total square footage. Anybody have any questions on that one? And we can go through it because it does mean something in that. This is staff support spaces, lunch break rooms, toilet showers. Nothing unusual about this. They did ask for a small bunk room for one person, someplace where, if there's overnight stays and things like that, there's someplace for somebody to go and have some quiet. So there's nothing. I did lay out these locker and showers to some level to make sure that they were that I accommodated the lockers and things like that. We had decided that for 6 female lockers and all 26 male lockers for staff. So that was the numbers that we had stuck with before and continue to stay with. Then there is the detention area. And this is, really a key piece of the building. Obviously, we have 3 spaces that are included in this Southport impound and standard vehicle spaces. There's 3 bays. They're 18 feet wide and 35 feet deep. 2 of them are that, and 1 is 16 feet wide and 35 feet. They'll accommodate an ambulance. The other 2 bays, if they are wanting, they can hold bulk evidence and recovered property storage. They do prefer drive-through, at least on the Southport one, that's for sure. There's down locker storage in these, and sliding. These are just some notes. There's a sliding door to the booking area, and this is where they'll also have some for vehicle care and maintenance. So that's their sort of garage space, so to speak. And then I've included bulk evidence and recovered property in the rear of the impound vehicle bays because they're deeper because of the depth of the ambulance. These are slightly deeper than a normal car bay might be, a vehicle bay, but that's why they'll accommodate those extra things. And it could be one space partitioned off with chain link. They could be separate spaces. They could have walls between them. It really depends on the design in the end. But the most important thing is we could have Southport completely separate from anything else, and that it works, for the safety of both the officers and the person has been arrested. So, and then we have these are standard spaces. There's a booking holding room, a room prior to stepping into booking. When you bring them off of the Southport, you're going to sit them down on a bench, handcuff them to a rail. And then, sort of gathering yourself together as a police officer to prepare for the booking process. And the booking room itself has a bench, it has a fingerprinting processing station, wash station, all of those required pieces for booking into the individual. We did put a detainee shower in here. We debated that a little bit, but if someone who's been quite sick from drinking or drugs or something, and it's really a mess, it's kind of nice to not have someone sitting in their cell in that state, and it's good for the officers to help. We have 2 holding cells. There'll be site cells separate, including a use for juveniles. And that space includes the circulation outside the cells for separation and inclusive privacy, so that, everybody, no one can see who is in those cells at any point, including persons next to it, and then a small interview room. So that is 3,565 square feet of space. These youth walls are typically a lot of times made of masonry, slightly thicker walls, but it provides you, a hardy surface for the cell blocks. And the cell blocks are accessible as well, so they're not small. They have to be wheelchair accessible. This also includes, I should have stayed on the page.
Jen, can I ask you a quick question? On the, not that I know anything about this, on the Sally Port, why would I guess my question is, maybe I missed it, where would there be any parking for police vehicles? I mean, why would we have a Sally Port for recovered property and an ambulance? I missed that part of the discussion.
Okay, so the Sally Port has to hold an ambulance. So if you arrest someone and there's an ambulance needed, that has to be accessible. So you have to make it deep enough for that. This is an impound bay. If the chief has a vehicle that is being impounded, tested, reviewed, we typically see it inside in a closed space, because sometimes it's there for a while. They're working on the vehicle, doing the testing of it or whatever they have to do, and then a standard vehicle for other things. Now, this is something we can certainly talk about, the square footage, but this is a pretty standard police garage that we've been doing.
So,
the chief can speak to this as well.
Janet, I'll just explain a little bit more. The Sally Port is the first form of detention from the cruiser to the cell blocks, right? So you pull into the Sally Port, you secure the Sally Port, and then you bring the person in custody then into the holding facility.
Okay.
Yeah, right here, into the booking holding.
Yeah.
And so these would be like, say you put that Sally Port right in the center, the impound and the other vehicle would be to the right, the detention would be to the left. So, that's a typical setup. I have done them, though, in some buildings where the Sally Port is on one side of the building and the impound and standard vehicles are on the other side of the building for planning purposes only. But if you can get them all together, it's good, because mechanically they can be separated with chain link fence. So they don't have to have separate mechanical systems, whatever. But the one I was talking about, that split, was because of the site that demanded it. So we did that. There's a couple other things in the police that they talked about. They talked about a shooting range. It's really hard to get the length of a shooting range into a plan comfortably, and then you have to do with all the ventilation issues, the hazardous materials, whatever. The most recent shooting range we put in was a freestanding shooting range that was, I think it was 90 feet long. Yeah, 25 yards. It was 100 by 9. So it did that. It did that where they're setting up to do the shooting, and that was a freestanding. It looks like a big corrugated box, so to speak, and it was on the back of the site when we used that. And then the police department also asked if they could get carport for parking for cruisers. So we put that below the line as items, but we did for 9 vehicles. Secured areas that it's not locked down, but it's behind the line so that people couldn't get at it. So we did 24-inch deep by 11 foot wide per vehicle, and that's how we'll talk for parking. That's something to discuss and think about, because that will, of course, have cost implications. And then when we did parking here, we came up with 40 possible parking spaces between the current and future staff. and the cruisers as they are assigned, and these are all outdoor spaces, although, the ATV and the boats could be stored inside the sally port in that last vehicle bay if it was important at the time to put it indoors, weather related or whatever. So that's the program, and these all need to be checked, that we got it right, but I think this is what we came out of programming with. So you see that there's the program of space, and then there's these other square footages, the shooting range and the carport. And then,
Janet, can I interject?
That's it for the police. Yes.
Can I interject just real quickly, just so I don't forget about this? I had sent you an email. This is for planning purposes that we didn't discuss in the on-site visit. For our detainees, we're required to fingerprint them with our live scan fingerprint.
Okay.
We're also required to fingerprint any LTC and FID firearms applicants, and that computer is one of the same.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure that you were aware of that, because they're about $15,000 a piece, and we want to just be able to have to maintain one of those systems, not two. So as far as planning purposes, we don't want to bring an LTC or an FID applicant into a secured area to take their fingerprints, just as long as you're aware of that. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I noted that later. We'll have to talk about how that actually works. How do you get, someone who isn't in the detention mode into the same area where you clearly want to, you have to have that piece of equipment in the booking room, because you don't really want to take a detainee out of that room.
Right, it just serves both functions. That one piece of equipment serves both functions, so I just want to make sure that you're aware of that for planning.
And I have that noted in an upcoming slide, so that is coming up. I did include that. The fire summary, again, has 3 main divisions: administration, staff support, and operations, and then the parking of those. It'll be the same process with them. The administration is 1,785 square feet, and then the staff support is 2,301 square feet. And they also sent some questions. They had some concerns, and I did that this thing in the same way. They had asked for separate bedrooms for each person on duty instead of 1. It was 5 separate bedrooms. It was dorm room single, and there were 5 of them. And so that number you were seeing was the total for that. So we've already accommodated that. And then, of course, we did separate the kitchen and day rooms. They can be split into 2 pieces. This is accommodation space. And we can figure out that. Again, it's plenty of square footage to work with. So I wanted to let you know we did that. So here's the offices for the chief. And there is a deputy chief office, and they can double up with a training officer. This is a part-time employee right now, and that's always. There's the administrative assistant. The administrative assistant for both departments is going to be shown in the shared spaces based on the programming we did. There is a fire captain office. There are 2 current and 4 projected, 1 captain on duty per shift, and then the EMS captain's office are 2 current and projected, and then they're really an administrative coordinator, so there's 1 space for that. So you can see there's just one physical space for each one of those things. The fire prevention officer is in the future. There's office and supplies, conference, archive, kitchenette, staff toilets. Now, we put staff toilets in each category. Depending on the final layout, we may be able to get rid of these staff toilets and things like that, but it really depends programmatically as to where they end up in plan. So we always include them in the programming, and depending on the plan, we may be able to do away with them. There may not need to be a kitchenette if the lunchroom is close by, but if there's not even a place to set a coffee pot down, that could be an issue again. And we always do 2 toilets, a male and a female toilet. That's why it always says 1 set of 2. And then the staff support, I have a comment around the top, which is based on your programming. There's 5 dorm rooms. They have a single bed, a side table. There are spaces for wardrobes, a storage bin, a small desk surface, and there are 5 of those. So a lot of people share these rooms, but that's why we have these 4 spaces for wardrobes. We provide typically separate toilet shower rooms, much like your private bedroom or home with a shower toilet and a sink in them, so that people have some privacy to do it with this amount of staff. That should be more than enough. We're showing a locker room nearby those with 24-inch lockers, and that's where they would put their clothing. Not their gear, but their personal clothing, coats, changing, shirts, pants, shoes, things like that. Then they have spare uniform closets. We talked about the kitchen and day room, the seating for that, cleaning supplies, and a janitor's closet and a laundry. So it's a residential washer and dryer, nothing more than that. So that's total square footage 2301 for that. And then the operation spaces, these are the considerable square footage, apparatus space, hose storage, gear storage, decontamination space, a lot of support spaces, the SBA, air compressors and oxygen and medical supplies. So let's go to the bigger spaces first. The apparatus space, there are 3 engines, 2 ambulances, 1 brush truck, 1 future tanker. It is stored indoors. There are preferences for drive-through bays if at all possible. And then these are the sizes that you're projecting to handle all that equipment, 72 feet deep. Bays, I've laid those out with the trucks. There's 2 at that size. 2 slightly bigger, those are the end bays. So that you can put things along the walls, utility trucks, UTV trailer, cheese car, parked outdoors, and that carport structure if possible. Then there's hose storage and then a hose tower. You've asked for a hose tower and 50-foot lengths, and so it's a small dimension, 12 by 12 or 10 by something else, depending on what we do in it. Could even possibly be coordinated to include some other spaces, but we do have a freestanding tower. There's gear storage for 40 gear lockers for staff. There are 2 toilet shower rooms for decontamination. This is the hot to cold zones in a fire department where the folks would come in with contaminated clothing and stuff on, and they would be able to get out of their gear, get them into appropriate places, get into shower rooms, clean up and change before they ever step foot into any living conditions. So that's for the laundry in that room too. So it's a different thinking perhaps than old, definitely different thinking than old things, but these spaces are all interconnected, and ice machines, utility, things, whatever ends up being in those spaces we can accommodate. You have a small mechanic room space now, and then equipment decontamination. You do not have a gear washer and dryer currently used at other towns. You suggested that you continue that arrangement. You don't wash your gear that frequently, but we would have the commercial sink, like a scullery sink with drain boards, so you could do backup boards and equipment like that, and cabinetry for supplies. So you still have equipment to contamination. This is your air tank, fill room, piece of equipment that goes in there, an air compressor room, oxygen storage. Right now you just leave things set out on the floors. We try to contain those. There's some bulk storage. We just named some of the things we talked about. Speed dry, household tools, spare tires, emergency equipment, other building supplies, lots of different things. There's a medical supply. You store, this would be close to the ambulance. You support a lot of your main drugs that on the ambulance as they exist right now. Janitor's closet, electric closet, and a communications equipment room for radio and battery charging. So you can see the gross area adjustments have dropped for big spaces like this because we don't consider the apparatus space to have that kind of circulation requirement. So you can see that the square footage for the gross area adjustments has dropped significantly in these big spaces. Spaces are bigger, adjustments are smaller because of that, and that's 8,120 square feet. And then the fire department also has asked for a carport parking for the utility truck, the chief's car, not indoors but outdoors. So we did those, and then the 9 vehicles that we included in that. In pieces and parts, sort of thing. And then the current staff is 3, additional future staff of 2. That would be the 2 ambulance and then 2 more ambulance people and the chief. And then the call responders, you have mentioned up to 15 might respond at a time, administration, stuff like that. And so that's how we got to 20 parking spaces for the fire department. Anybody have questions on the fire?
I have a question.
Sure.
I remember when we toured that there were workout rooms. Is this something that I'm missing in there?
That's next.
Oh, that's next. Great.
Okay. Why don't we do that? So the shared includes public space, communication, staff support, and building support, and then outdoor spaces.
Okay.
And let's go through those. This is where your concern was, Chief, about the fingerprint equipment. I put it on the shared because the firearms application process is a public process. We have this public interview room, which we probably want to set that up to do. So we got to figure out how to interconnect those 2 pieces, and that's the space that the chief was asking about. So I did have that in here. So there's the entry vestibule in the lobby. It's unstaffed. There's a video call system off hours to dispatch at the regional center. The police have 5 to 10 walk-ins per day. The fire department has 2 to 3 visitors a day, unless it's burning season, and there's particular seasons where that stuff ramps up. Up to 12 a year for medical emergencies. Lockdown arrangements at vestibule is a safe haven have been discussed, and I think that's a really good idea. We have that public interview room, safe room, off lobby, permitting or licensing, and it's also a safe area. Oftentimes we set these up so that door is immediately off the lobby. If someone is being chased, a concern for their safety, a witness, whatever, and they come in through the lobby, we get them into a room like that. Immediately there's a door on the opposite side into a more secure area. And so if, say you would arrest person A, person B is their neighbor, and a witness, person B is in the lobby, and person A comes in, we try to keep that separate at all times. So that's how that room works. We have the training room, Emergency Operations Center, and the community room. We have set that up for 48 seats for the fire department, 40 for the police department. The fire department trains there weekly, between 10 and 20 people, all kinds of training. So that's how that room was set up. And I didn't ever hear anybody from EOC, so that's still remaining available. Clean that up. We have the administrative assistant. It's occupied by 2 and 1 visitor, but right now it's proposed as shared, but both of you have suggested that there might be 2 separate workspaces in the future for 2 separate people. We wouldn't necessarily move them out of that area, we just have enough space to have that work. And then for this training room, there's storage for tables and chairs. We put a small space for the EOC, a closet, so that that they have the things that go into the EOC immediately come out, that there's a space for. We've done that several ways. We've done it as closets, we've done it as built-in cabinetry with locked doors, really depends on what you have to do. We put 2 sets of that public toilet with 48 people being in there. We don't have enough toilets to meet the plumbing code. And then we put a small kitchenette in that, so that if you are having community room spaces or even EOC, you want to be able to have that kitchenette close by. Now, it's also possible that somehow in the layout of the whole space, that a kitchenette for one of the other apartments is close by. But this allows a community use space more readily and using that community. So if you're having an event and people have a catering and have snacks or something, it's actually a place to clean up. And that's 3,300 space. And then these are those other spaces: communication, staff support, and building support. And then the outdoor spaces. So communications or radio room for major, there's a receiver radio room. There's no dispatch in this building anymore because of the centralized location, but there is an need to have something as a backup and emergency operations. Then here's that fitness room, shared between the two departments, but near locker rooms, set up so that in between locker rooms or it's connected from locker rooms or something, but that's 1,078 square feet. And then here's the building support spaces that are required in the building. These are placeholders right now. Server rooms, mechanical, electrical, fire protection, emergency electrical. There's electrical closets on floors, janitor's closets, stairs, and an elevator machine room that goes up on the floor. Would include that. And so that's the total for that, 2,181. There's also some site planning elements. There's going to be probably an antenna, there's going to be dumpsters, there's going to be generating transformers. I just mentioned a few of them, but these are not small, especially things like the generators, could be the size of a school bus. So, it's not little. And I knew I'd have a spelling error. It's not hours, it's hours, H-O-2-R-S, rather. And then we did a parking for 20 people for visitors. And that'll accommodate all of the, it's on the other sheet, but it'll accommodate visitors and public spaces. So how we lay out the parking to have maybe the staff space, behind a gate, possibly behind a fence, and the public spaces for the coming to the administrators or to get records or whatever that must be, plus all the people that could be in the community room. Whoops. And are we all there still? Are you all what? Can you still see my presentation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, I just lost it. Okay, hold on. Okay, we're back. I'm back. Okay, then I want to do a summary comparison, but I do want to ask if there are any questions that you had some questions about shared spaces. Did I answer those for you?
If you're talking about me looking for the fitness room, you answered.
Yes. Yes, I didn't know if there were any other spaces that you were asking about, so. Okay. All right, so Amy and I did a summary comparison, and here's the 2023 program that we just talked about. When you add all that up, it's 29,968 gross square feet. We include circulation in each of our gross square foot numbers. That's how we do it because we vary them for space, like you saw the grossing numbers for the apparatus drop to zero, so that's how we do it. We have your 2014 diagram from a presentation you did, and they had these net square footages for the police, the fire, the shared. They did a separate circulation factor, and that came up to, we believe, 20,355 square feet. But then when you did the cost estimate, you used number 21,669 as a gross square feet. So we think that they did some sort of a circulation, and then you added on a factor for other things like walls and that in there. So those are the numbers, the two numbers that we kind of looked at together and said our program now is 707,000 square feet, 6,800 square feet. Which is a significant increase in the square footage, and that gross square footage does not include the carports, does not include the shooting ranges, because though those are wonderful spaces, if you could do without them or plan for the future to add them, you could probably live without them, I would say. And I did note the differences. Everybody does programming slightly differently. In 2014, their categories were very generalized, and I tried to do an apples-to-apples comparison, and near impossible to do because we just didn't do it that way. We have a more detailed space assignment document, and they might have had one, and what I'm looking at might be just a generalized summary. But the difference in planning for office and the lab spaces, record storage, operations rooms, the way we accounted for overall storage units and that sort of the police department. The fire department, the planning for support spaces and everything was very different. The storage spaces for operations, their storage, they didn't have a host tower, and they really didn't, probably mostly because of the timing when that was done 9 years ago. There were no, really, these hot and cold zone allowances were not on the front of everybody's planning at that time. And then the shared, they did plan for a safe zone. They didn't have a shared administration area in there. And then the size and support spaces for the training were very different, as well as communication, fitness, and everything. Some of them were a little bit higher, some of them were a little bit lower, mostly lower, and that's how the discrepancy. And then, of course, you gotta add all their nets together and then really compare the gross square foot numbers that do, and to really get the idea. But this is not insignificant. And we need to tackle that. And I don't know if we want to talk a little bit about money here, but we know that in 2014, if people thought it was the Taj Mahal, and I don't know what they're getting now. The building has grown, and it's grown for programmatic reasons. It's grown because police and fire do different things than they did 9 years ago. We know that. There's more emphasis on health and safety now. There's a lot more emphasis on safety and security for the people who work in the building and the people that come to visit the building. So there's a lot of reasons that they've gotten bigger or with cases. Interestingly, the apparatus bays were almost exactly the same size year to year. There were some spaces that were quite large. You guys were more generous. The program before was more generous in office space for the chiefs. We put a conference room. They had a conference room too, but we made those a little smaller. So we had some spaces that were similar, and then some that were not accommodated at all. Their salad port was different things. So I think when we're talking about buildings of the cost that they are now, 7,000 or 6,800, I should not say 7,000, 6,800 square feet is not an insignificant delta when this delta here was already deemed too large, perhaps, or too costly. I'm not sure which it was. So maybe do you want to add to this at all? And then we should open it for some discussion.
I mean, I think you've summarized it. Does anyone have any questions? Do you understand what we're saying about the comparison? Really, you have to look at that bottom line, the totals, the gross square footage, because up above that, it is a bit of an apples to oranges comparison with where our figures are based on gross square footage, and the 2014 program is based on net square footage, we believe, based on what we've seen. So really, you have to look at that bottom line to really understand the differences.
Are you saying the 23,000 from 2014 is net or gross?
No, that's gross, but all the numbers above that are net.
Okay.
It's just the different ways that we put a program together and the previous architect put the program together. As best we could tell, we were looking at their program from, I think it was from a PowerPoint presentation. That was the information we had, and it appeared that everything was based on net square footage, and then they had a subtotal, which was that 20,355 square footage, and then the cost estimate was based on 23,169 gross square feet. So somehow they made that calculation to get from net square footage to gross square footage for the cost estimate.
I don't know if anybody was there remembers how that number made, how that transitioned. But the PowerPoint that we're looking at, the 23,000 square foot follows the page and shows this number. So we figured they were interconnected, and they had done it because when their 15% number was just circulation. So we figured this number from here to here was somehow, what we call a factor for walls and things like that. That's all we could, all we could figure.
As Janet said earlier, just so everyone understands, when we're doing the program, that gross square footage factor, it takes into account, like Janet said, the exterior walls, plumbing chases, mechanical shafts, those sorts of things that you have to account for as you're doing the programming, because they do add up pretty quickly in a building. And if you're just looking at the net square footage, which is the measurement inside the walls of an individual room, and adding those all up without factoring that grossing factor in, you'll end up with a real surprise once you do a floor plan and you do start to factor in those shafts and chases and wall thicknesses and all, because they take up quite a bit of space in the end.
Amy,
Yeah, I mean, if a building is 100 feet long and the exterior wall is 1.5 feet wide, that square footage, times 2 stories high, has to be accommodated somewhere. Just think of it that way.
Amy, is the cost estimate based on net or gross?
It's based on on gross. When you do a cost estimate, it's not usually that simple. When we're looking at big picture numbers, we're looking at gross, and we're saying, this building costs X dollars per square foot. We're looking at gross numbers. When we do a real cost estimate, we're looking at much more detail. We're looking at the types of materials, how a wall is actually constructed, what types of mechanical systems we anticipate going in. All of that data then gets added together, and you end up with the dollars per gross square foot in the end.
Am I understanding this correctly, that what your numbers are coming to is this building will be about 22% larger than what was proposed in 2014?
If somebody divided here, maybe doing the math.
Doing the math, yeah.
Well, it is at this stage, but that's the next step. What I could be saying to you is, now what happens? We know this number yielded a cost that was too high for the town, and it didn't get better. Let's put it that way. It got worse by a decent factor. Is that 23%? Like a quarter.
It's actually, 6,799 is about 29% of 23,169. So it is quite a bit larger. So I guess that is, what we want to talk to you guys about is the number that we're presenting, the program that we're presenting right now is based on our conversations with the chiefs and what we heard as their needs. If you want to proceed with that number, we can proceed with that number. If you feel like that will never pass because it is larger than what you've looked at before, then we need to start talking about ways to cut and what are essentials and what are things that you might be willing to give up moving forward.
Amy, at one point you gave us an estimated square foot, cost per square foot. And I don't recall exactly what that was. And I know that that's a very general number, we can't really, but just to give us an idea, I think for us, or this community, it's not so much the Taj Mahal, it's the price tag, right? So if that could just give us somewhat more of an idea of where 29 or almost 30,000 gross square feet might put us roughly.
Go with the 30,000.
Yeah. Well, it's not good. We had been telling people $800 to $850 a square foot, probably. I was just talking to an OPM that I'm working with on another project, and he was bidding. He just got bids last week for a community center that was a wood frame structure, and it came in at $900 a square foot, which was considerably higher than they had anticipated. It wound up being, I don't know in terms of percentages, but he told me it was about $1.8 million over what the cost estimate was. So the numbers are continuing to really
rise.
to really
That's
rise.
$27 million, if anyone wants to know the calculation.
Can I ask, you summarized a moment ago your assessment of the differences of what any building, a public safety building, needs compared to 2014.
Yeah.
You mentioned programmatic differences, health and safety, security, and then there was another one and I didn't get it fast enough. Do you remember?
It was probably the hot and cold zone.
The hot and cold zone, yeah.
So there's a real emphasis now on fire station safety and the carcinogens that the firefighters are exposed to when they go out to fight fires. And when they come back into the station, trying to find a way to limit the spread of those contaminants that are on their gear and prevent it from getting into the living quarters and into the administration spaces. So to try to get them into the station, get them out of their gear, get their bodies cleaned because they've got those carcinogens or potential carcinogens on their bodies, get their gear cleaned before they move into other spaces. And that takes added space. It takes both in terms of unique spaces that we didn't used to program into stations, as well as the circulation. So the path that they go through needs to be thought through carefully so that they're not recontaminating things as they move into the station. So we try to program all of that in, but that's something that is relatively new that people have been talking about. So I doubt very much that in 2014 there was any thought put into that because people just weren't talking about it at that point in time. It's really something that there's been focus on. I mean, I'm thinking, we've been talking about it probably for 6 years or so at this point.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So it's been, there's things that have come and gone, that people talked about, and then, it didn't prove to be something that they wanted to pursue. But this hot and cold zone, it's so clear what happens. You're contaminated, you walk into a corridor, the door closes behind you, you get into a shower room, you take those clothes off, those clothes are distributed and cleaned, and then you're cleaned. And then so when you come out, you're clean. And then you're not taking all of that and walking through the buildings. Or walking back into another space that has clean stuff in it. It's self-containing that stuff. And some spaces are easier to work to have those connections be clean. Others are not so simple to do. And you have to really plan them out carefully. But that's relatively new. Can I tell you what the square footage has been added? No. But for instance, I own, I think, two shower rooms added, plus corridor space, plus these separations between gear, the contamination and all that, so that, and those spaces haven't gotten that much bigger, but maybe the layout will in the end because of how you have to link pieces together. So that's what I did. That's what I mentioned. That's what I just explained. So. Also, administration-wise, I think that the chiefs can talk about, I think there were probably two people in the chief and the ambulance in the fire department that you accommodated. Now they're asking to accommodate an additional ambulance crew of 2. Not a whole lot. There's still always going to be a call station, but there's a couple more spaces there. From the police point of view, there were a few future positions that in each case that we've accommodated, but they weren't huge. There's and you have to plan for those. I mean, you have to plan for them now. You can't tack on an office or 2 later on. You plan for it now. And so there was a future captain and another detective that were planned, and then there were some future operations people, but again, that space didn't get any bigger. We set that up to work as a one space. Some police departments have a roll call room that's separated from a report room, and separate from an operation. They separate them into pieces. And in this particular case, the chief asked for that one room that was sort of is a shared workspace as well as a roll call room. It had a conference table, so you could have meetings around it. It could be used for many different things. So, and then he had a future training officer that was done I think the way we do evidence too, we can go through that again with the chiefs, and we have a large evidence room, and then we have a separate room for valuable evidence, drugs and jewelry and things like that. The evidence prep area is not very big, but it's on the outside of that, so that there's a clear space where the officers can bring their evidence in, tag it appropriately as they're required, and put it into evidence lockers. These are real lockers with real security, with refrigerator units for rape kits and things that need to be refrigerated right away. I would assume 9 years ago they were planning that, but I can't be certain. I don't have enough detail on that. The police department did ask for that decontamination with the shower and the lockers in the shower room. Because of what they experienced during COVID. I think it's Chief, and you can correct me, you said right now people go home, right?
They would go home, yes, yeah.
Yeah, and I said, so they're taking all their contaminated everyday person home and contaminating their own personal home, and then coming back to work. I think the town would probably prefer to keep that controlled, clean, and and not take those home with people, certainly nowadays.
Many a days they went home with vomit on me.
Yeah. So there's not a whole lot of things there's nothing, absolutely nothing that jumps out at Amy or I that it seems like this is a big ask, a big ask.
I think one of the things that the chief had made comment on during the earlier meeting was that the real reality is the functionality of it. I mean, no matter how big the town is or what the price tag is, there's certain things that have to be accommodated for in these facilities that maybe were not well defined last time. I don't know, but it certainly seems, I think we saw all the nooks and crannies that they've been using to try and store gear and files and evidence and whatever else. And obviously, we need to recognize that there needs to be some dedicated space to that. So figuring out where we could try to cut back would be a challenge. And I guess looking at this chart you have up there, and I know we've got a difference between GSF and NSF, but is that really a doubling of the shared space, for example? Almost doubling.
Yeah. It could be what they included in the shared space. It was really hard for me to do apples and apples.
But if you had to think about where we're cutting, we know that we need certain, dimensions for the ambulance and fire trucks and other, vehicles, etc. Would you recommend looking at the shared space first before looking at the other departments, or how would you recommend we tackle this?
I would start with, like Amy and I taking a stab at just slimming down the rooms a little bit because I don't think the spaces are going to go away. I still think you need these spaces. The question is, can they get a little smaller? Would that be acceptable? Like if we could figure a way of doing a training room and getting, a built-in cabinetry instead of having storage space for the EOC, would that be acceptable? We can, I know it sounds like cutting like 1,000 little cuts, but that will decrease the overall square footage. It will in the end. Just making spaces slightly smaller. It's not going to get you 7,000 square feet, but it'll pick up square footage. Even then, I'm going to go back to like office space. I made, because there are two people, we made a 12 by 12 room, give or take, and in every office I did 10 by 12 because it's sort of a standard size of furniture. But maybe we say, okay, we're going to make those all 10 by 10s, period. And they just get smaller, and then we, so we pick up 40 square feet there, and then we pick up the gross heat adjustment, the circulation, and it just starts to add up. That would be one thing. If we can figure out in the plan how to get rid of, an extra toilet room or something like that, that helps. But you're still going to need these rooms. You're going to still need, just like you said, instead of those million little spaces you saw, now we combine them into real typical, normal spaces that should serve them for that, for that length of time. Like archive document, that's not a very big room for archive document, but they this is what they store, one tour per year for 8 years plus, anything else. So we didn't make it a very big room. We also didn't make it so small that it couldn't be repurposed, and that's another thing to think of. Like, okay, so the chiefs and their staff did a yeoman's job trying to think about the future, but what if they decide that they're going to hire, I don't know, a prosecutor or something, or something, is going to come here. A state police officer is going to sit in your building, which, believe me, we've had. We have a couple of departments where they, especially in oceanfront communities, where the state police actually occupy a space in the building. Well, you'd have to move them in somewhere. So where would you put them? You'd want to have them in a space, and maybe that is that small room that is sized as an office. So we don't like to make things unusable in the future, so that it's just so. So that would be my first attempt, and I'd certainly like the chiefs and their staffs to look at it again and say, we really actually don't need that, or we could do with that. Like, they have these spare uniform closets, and they have them because people work at the dome, come back. We've given that a closet size, of space, but, do we actually need it? I don't know. And then we have a couple things, a couple janitor's closets and things that are, sort of dedicated to a department because of the use of the space, but maybe there's a way of figuring out how to make the regular janitor's closets that are covered in the general things work for everyone. So sometimes there's a few extra, because sometimes there's a janitor's closet associated with the detention, but then you want to have a janitor's closet associated with the building. So, there's things like that. There's a couple of those sorts of spaces that we could start with and try to drive it down, but I think it's going to take both of our efforts. I mean, what I'm hearing from you is, I would be terrified of the number 2. I'm terrified telling people these numbers nowadays. I think our last project did it, 650 maybe or something. So in 3 years, it's gone from 650 to 850, or more.
Well, there's another number that has to be considered too, and that's furnishing and equipping that building.
Oh yeah, this is just
That's just the building.
Right, that's cost, right?
And that'll be another part to it. My personal feeling is I would ignore the 2014 information at this point because it's so outdated. It's not applicable to today. The other part to it, my personal feeling is this is a building we're going to have in service for what, 40 years?
20.
So if you look at the cost in relationship to 40 years, then all of a sudden it actually looks a little bit palatable. And I would rather not cut and make it smaller, only to be coming back in 10 years trying to modify everything. I've seen enough of that in town.
Right. Well, the reason we put it here is because this is the last thing that's sat in front of your community. They know these numbers, and they're going to talk to you about it. So we didn't want to ignore it because it is something that people have seen and people will remember. People will dig out. It's easy to find this information. But a lot of it is and we'll talk about a little bit later. A lot of it is understanding all these things, getting that word out to people about what's happening and how you use space and why. And I know it's really hard to get the public to tour, particularly a police station, because it's there's so many private things going on in there. But getting people to understand that this is our evidence room. It's literally a walkway that's been converted, or a closet. But the closet is not really. It doesn't bode well for you guys do a yeoman's job keeping it all tracked and legal and everything, but it's not the chain of custody that you would like to have, I'm sure. I want to do that differently. So, I think maybe, I'll take one look at it ourselves and comment. You guys take another quick look at it and see if there's anything that we overdid, because we can overdo sometimes. And I appreciate people talking about, like, saying goodbye to 2014 program, but I think it can't be completely abandoned because it's out there for people to see, and the numbers are high. Just for your own thinking, when we gave you that number, these are construction costs, and they do include the site, by the way, those numbers. But unless there's something extraordinary about the site, we hope to find out that there is nothing. But when somebody's talking about outfitting the building, the soft cost of construction, these are hard costs, for about 25 to 30% above and beyond that. And that includes everything from furniture to cameras to costs to the testing, commissioning, fees, moving costs. It's all included in legal costs, legal fees. We can give you a spreadsheet of the things that go into that. But from a planning point of view, it's 25 to 30%. So, and sometimes you can get a little lower, but not too often in the end.
Do you price out, is the square footage priced out uniformly? And the reason I'm asking is, I believe you mentioned before that the big open bays of the fire trucks may not be as costly as the other portions. So I'm just wondering, is it a uniform 850 or whatever per square foot, or will there be variation in per square foot cost?
So when we do the cost estimate, that's what I was saying before, is that we're not looking at just a cost per square foot number at that point in time. We have a cost estimator who's actually looking and saying, okay, what kind of flooring are you having in this space? All right, so linoleum flooring costs this much per square foot, and ceramic tile costs this much per square foot, and he's actually doing takeoffs of each of those spaces. So, the qualities of that space dictate the cost that you come up with at the end. The numbers that we're telling you, the $800 to $900 a square foot, is just an average for the whole building in the end. That's what
I'm asking. So when you give us a price per square foot, you're averaging it out to cover all the different costs of the kinds of costs that are being incurred.
Right.
So for instance, an apparatus bay, by the way, there aren't a lot of walls within the base itself. The floor is heavy duty. So you're not building a 5-inch concrete floor, you're building a 9-inch concrete floor, to carry the weight of the trucks and everything. So you may be smaller in one thing, but you're going to be bigger in another. So you can't. That's why we do these takeoffs, because he will take off that concrete thickness versus a standard floor, and he will make a differential in that as well. That was really what I was talking about. That is because there's no walls in an apparatus bay, so they're wide open. And whereas in an office there's walls around it immediately. A police and a fire station are made up of a lot of small spaces, and then a couple of big spaces, like the garages or the apparatus bays. So you don't get. That's why the grossing factors are pretty consistent until you get to those big spaces, and then they can change.
And I would like to ask one more question that you were referring back to the carcinogens that are being removed from both equipment and personnel. It was described to me that would go into a tight tank. We do not have sewer here in Southampton. Where is that cost being factored in? That's not within the $850 a square foot, is it, or is it?
Well, it would be. I mean, again, these are just averages, and they include the site costs. So that's what Janet was saying. This is sort of a general site, but if we come up with a site that has a lot of unique features to it, if you found out that there was ledge that required blasting or something, that wouldn't be necessarily accommodated in the costs that we're talking about. But for your sort of average site development costs, these numbers hold.
And our estimator was talking specifically about public safety when he was talking to us, not office buildings or general construction, he was specifically talking public safety when he came up with those numbers. 'Cause he
I just
does a lot
wanted to
of
make
things.
sure that that was included, because that's going to be a cost. That's an important cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, we just did a fire and police station that had $750,000 of blasting. Well, that number sat below, for instance, because it was unique to the site. It was a hillside, well, not 35 feet of hillside with a lot of ledge. And so but we did a lot of predetermined work to come up with that estimate. And we have a little bit more in our estimate. We had like $850,000 or $900,000, I think, sitting in that budget, and it came in at $750,000 or so. So we did really well with that. And so, we get a hint of any unsuitable soils, things like that. And we just did a project that required special foundations. I just did a project that had deep foundations because of unsuitable soils. So sometimes that shows up, and those do cost more. We accommodate that. So
as far as site development, another question I have is, one of the sites you're going to be looking at is already owned by the town. It's where the existing fire station is, versus another one which may require purchase of the site. How would those costs be accommodated? The difference of already owning the site versus purchasing?
Well, that'll be in the soft costs.
That's still in the soft
property
costs.
will be in the soft costs, because building potentially on each of those sites will be even. The differential will be in the purchase of the property or something. Now, it could, excuse me, it could be that the property that you buy is a lot nicer piece of property to build on than the one you own. And so the site costs could be different, and who knows, that could make a difference in the estimate. We wouldn't know that at this point in time. So that's something we have to look at.
Access roads or driveways are, distance from the main highway, is that considered a soft cost as well?
Depends.
Yeah, I think it depends on whether it's on the site or not. If it's part of the site versus having to put in infrastructure to get to a site.
Yeah.
Are you talking about it being on the site itself?
I don't really know. I don't know. I just know that there already is a driveway getting into our current fire station. It may not be the right kind of driveway, but versus something else which is nothing on it right now. There's a couple the properties are going to look at there. There's no development.
79 Clark has a long kind of piece of land before you get to the bulk of the site. Are you thinking of a site like that?
Well, you're going to look at 3, yeah. And the other one is, it's called Zero College Highway, and nothing's developed on there now, but there's a proposal for other kinds of development to occur on there, which I would suspect have to be considered, and I don't know how the costs, I just wondered if those kinds of extra costs to consider these variations are considered soft costs, or are they in the 850 per square foot? They're all soft, those are soft, I got you.
Right now they are, and until we know a little bit more about them, I have to stick in that world. I do have more slides here, which include pictures of those sites and a cost comparison, a matrix that we're going to be talking about, which includes reference to development costs, and acquisition costs. So,
Janet, can I just ask one more question
Sure.
before you leave this topic? How does your cost estimator dictate materials? And I guess what I'm saying is, if we're looking for a very cost-efficient building, and perhaps metal versus brick and mortar might be more cost-effective, when you're designing this, how does that cost estimator dictate that? Is that something that we have to express to you folks, or is this something that you express to him or her or the firm, whoever it may be?
It's both. So I think, we know you really want something cost effective and something that's going to last you. We just heard, 40 years. So, we're going to be balancing both of those things. I think what has been really shocking to a lot of people in recent years is how little cost difference there is between some of these building materials now. Several years ago, metal became a very trendy material, and that really drove up the cost for it. And then the energy code was tweaked ever so slightly to changed the way anchorage for these systems was handled, and you had to have thermally broken anchorage, which really drove up the cost of a lot of cladding materials like metal and fiber cement. And so what we found in recent years, believe it or not, is that there's not a huge delta in the end between having metal or fiber cement and having masonry products. Before we put any sort of design options in front of you, we will have a conversation with the cost estimator right away and say, what are you seeing in the market right now for these materials? What are you seeing as the most cost effective? I can tell you we've had those conversations with him before, and we have been designing more and more with masonry recently because it's actually been more affordable than some of these other materials.
I just did a building north of Massachusetts and New Hampshire, but similar, you know, they have the same problems getting materials and costs. And the building was originally designed with a masonry base and metal above. But by the time we finished the design, it was cheaper for them to do everything in masonry, so they got an all masonry building out of it, which they were very happy about because they originally, that's what they sort of wanted. But the cost was cheaper. So, you know, but it took a while through the process of going through, you know, coming up with the concepts and working through things and getting approvals from committees and things like that. And we were still balancing those two numbers. There was a construction manager at the time was working right along with us and doing the job of the cost estimator. Same process, but different titles. So, like Amy said, we're gonna be working with you on making sure you like the design of it. I can tell you, we know some facts. We know a flat roof building is cheaper than a pitched roof building. We just know that because of construction. We know that. But your town might say, there's no way we want a flat roof building in our town. You know, it just doesn't work with us. We don't like them. We think they'll work. And that could be a decision this May. But we do know, you know, we know some things like that. We can't build these wall sections significantly cheaper. In fact, the energy code is changing that again. It's making it even not harder to build, but more costly to build. Triple pane windows in some areas, somebody's told me recently, are going to be required, or, you know, people that go with these enhanced energy things. But, you know, we have to put a lot of insulation into these buildings, the connection systems that I was talking about, so they don't transmit the cold from the outside. What Amy was talking about was, before when we used to build buildings, we used to use metal to hang things off of it. Well, that cold, the cold air got transmitted through that metal into the building. Now we have a sort of a disconnect between the two pieces, so that cold isn't transferred, which works for the energy code. Those things, you can't change those. You can't go back in time and build a building. You know, like they did when I started in architecture, we had 2 inches of insulation called every day. You know, it's just not the way it works anymore. So, and you would want that too. You don't want to have a building that costs you a fortune to heat or cool. You don't want that either. You know, ultimately, that and some of the biggest things you have to fight with the community is that they just relate this to their own homes or building a garage in their own homes, which is not the same thing. They also related to a neighboring town that built a building 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and we can, you know, like we talked about that before, we can help you through that and actually estimate. We keep track of buildings when they were done, and it's really hard to do is get the cost of part construction costs, which is separate from the soft costs, because every town's soft costs are different, but their hard costs are the ones that Amy was just talking about, that 50 or whatever. Those are consistent from town to town. And that we can escalate those numbers and help you through that. And so, you know, somebody will say, well, I built this for $10. Well, it's not $15, and we can prove it because we can prove escalation over the years. So that's something that goes into our work with you going forward. So, part of it is hard. You know, this is where the rubber meets the road. This is setting the case for the concept to follow. For the estimates. And we can also ask our customer, by the way, we will sort of tailor, like if we asked him to do a add alternate to go all masonry, or to, you know, he says that masonry is going to be cheaper, he'll also tell us what that might cost in another material. He can't tell us what the building's going to cost from pitch roof to a flat roof because there's too much engineering and stuff that goes into that. Our MEP and T engineers will talk to you about systems, and that'll have a cost implication for how much it varies per square foot for a building system. How you want to operate this building, from the simplest to the most,
Thank you, Janet, for everything. I don't want you to have to go too deep into it at this stage. If you want to continue with the rest of your presentation.
Yeah, let me go through it, so we can come back, because, the rest of it is not as, as heart-stopping, so to speak. You've all seen the schedule. Christina, have you shared that with everybody?
I did, I sent it around.
Okay, so I just wanted to point out, we wanted to get on your schedule, and I did talk to Ed about the end date of 3/8. And so, Ed, I would appreciate everybody looking through that. We'll have regular, and you can blow it up a little bit. So we are, right here, right now, presenting, and then hopefully next week, if everything goes well, we'll get these sites. Okay, we're going to talk about the matrix here. And then we enter into this phase of the design, which is when we're presenting options for you. You've selected the site, we're presenting options that get pared down. We have some elevations, so we'll be looking at materials. At that point, we'll be meeting with our engineers, GGD, talking about systems options. And then, we'll have, and the one thing that you guys really need to think about is this community meeting. When you want to do it in a scheduled in conceptual design, that you guys need to think about when you want to put on your schedule, what you want to show at that point. Then we'll have this phase of cost estimating. And we're proposing to get those ready and get that professional cost estimate in January. And then present that at the end of January, and then you'll know what the numbers are. And then we'll be doing the report following that. Now, things may shift a week or two if they have to, but we have a tight schedule to get all this done and have that report done by the 8th, the final revised report. So take a peek at that and tell me what you think, and whatever, and when you might want to have meetings, and we'll make sure. And just my presentation just takes you through each one of them, so we don't have to look at that again. And then the other part is the site assessments, which is coming up next week, 204 College Highway, 79 Clark at Zero College. And I think when I was asking if this site has, I'm not going to get this right, but there are wetlands, there are all kinds of buffer zones that we have to contend with. It's what you have on your site now, so you already know about it. There's the hillside, there's the grades that that are going to affect the cost of it. This is 79 Clark, and this is the one that has, here's the site back here, I believe. And so if there was a long driveway to get to a building, that could affect the cost. And then the last one is Zero College, and the site here is the location, and that's that little building here that they've offered, or apparently offered, and that somehow sits within that. From a fire and police department point of view, not the best for a fire department to have to come out and turn, and go down a long road and turn again, mix in with the neighborhood so much. But if this is the best site for the department, we'll make it work. We are wondering maybe there's a way of carving a roadway here so that we don't mix these two things. We don't know, but that's what will be happening in the next week. They're going to be looking at that. And then,
just Janet, before you move on from that, I guess a question for all of you about that site. So I'm assuming that the Zero College Highway is the larger site that is owned by the developer, and that they've carved out this one little parcel that they're potentially giving to the town, or you're buying. Should we only be looking at that one little piece, or should we be looking at the larger, if there was an area that would be better for placing a public safety building, would that be something you would present to the owner, or is this really set in stone?
I suspect it's pretty much set in stone based on a meeting that I attended.
Okay.
So that's just like, yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, if we have no idea if it's 4 acres. We have no idea. We hope that would be sufficient, but we don't know. We don't know how it works. We don't know if that makes sense for a fire department. They used a diagram that I don't know where they got it from. They could have picked it up with someone's plans. They could have got it from someone else. But if this is the site, that's the site. We'll figure it out. Let you know. We've had challenging sites, and they all have some challenge to them already. Rarely does a town get a absolutely flat, perfect site in the right location. It just doesn't happen very frequently. Once they finish their assessment, we're going to do, and I will send this to you individually, but this is the site matrix, and this is the thing that we are going to score with you at the meeting. I've created this one. There are 6 categories, and we can. And I would ask you to read through this and see if there's anything else. I've sent it on to my civil engineer as well. Amy and I'll go over it again. We've looked at it, but there's 6 categories, and what you do is we created these 0.1 numbers, 1.1, 2, 3, based on each one of them, and for each of the sites, and then the total points available, we assign numbers to them. And then, for instance, it was a say neighborhood, or minimal impact on residential neighborhood and community. We get the highest amount of points that we would assign to that group, and we'll assign numbers to each one of these. And then it has a moderate impact on the neighborhood, has a significant impact on the neighborhood. So it goes from like best to worst, and no private owner or butter. So what I'd like you to look at is if you think these things make sense to your community, like I have public facade and screening always is an important thing because there's private owners, particularly in the zero college site. There's a lot of housing around that, a lot of people. How would you screen the building to have this police department and fire department coming out facing the building every single day, how many times a day or week or month, whatever community visibility. So you'll see these. I'll send this out to Christina so she can share it with you. It's on this thing, and so we'll be scoring these. And so this is an Excel document. We fill in the numbers, and they total through magically to 100, which is a good number for people because everybody knows what 100% is perfect, and anything below a certain number. And so each one of the sites will be scored. It's not going to tell you exactly that you have to get this site or you should do this site, but it might push you one way or the other, And you can see, I forgot to point out that there is acquisition and cost of development as 2 items here. And I've arbitrarily assigned the points right now to add up to 100, but we can vary these. So if you have to acquire it, it costs you, I'm just going to say $100, and this site costs you $0. Well, obviously, one's going to get all the points and one's not. But in the end, does that matter in the big picture? I don't know, because the cost of development of that site might be significantly higher, and that'll balance it out somehow. So we do these as a tool. It helps you when you're selling the project. Why did we pick this site? Well, we looked at it objectively. What you want to do is look at it objectively. And sometimes when we do this, different people in the community speak out to, or the committee speak out to the different characters. It should be the chief and the fire chief particularly, but because your call is a little different, for the location. Maybe someone who's more involved in environmental concerns or things like that might be more comfortable speaking on or speaking more publicly about what they think about that or how the town reacts to environmental. And then availability is the big thing. Like I have no idea the 2 sites that you would have to purchase, or is it a purchase, or is it a trade, or is it a, program that's not donate, is it a donated condition? I have no idea. So
Janet, just to be clear, this is not something that PAR and you are all going to fill out after PAR has come and visited. We're also going to be filling out this matrix?
But you're going to be filling it out with us.
We'll have PAR's report at this point. That's what we're saying. We need their feedback before we can start this process. So we're hoping.
Because I'm assuming not all of us are going to be present at the site visit, so some of us will not have walked the property to see any of this stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, we usually do this in a session where we literally have the Excel document open and you agree. Now, the one thing I would suggest is you have the person who makes the final decision. So oftentimes it's the town administrator or somebody that has, that's sort of neutral. And so sometimes people agree about that this deserves, 6 points, and so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this has 6 categories, or maybe each one is going to have 4 points available to it that make up 24, but maybe not. And so somebody says, well, that's a 4, and somebody says that's a 1. Somebody's going to have to do it, or we could be. Literally, I did one with one town. We sat through 2 8-hour meetings to do this. It's not going to take that long. This is not that complicated.
The way we're talking, it's going to be.
But, it's, and you can even score it before when you come, and you're already prepared, to make the case. And you might agree, you might agree that, and sometimes people push it towards the site a little bit, but I would ask you to be as fair about it for each of the sites, because you have to keep your mind open that one site might really be better than that for other reasons that you didn't consider, So that's on the next that's the next thing to keep in mind, and I'll set that. So,
and I think, as Janet said, if you look at these categories and you think something's missing, definitely let us know, because there are things that we don't know about your community that might be really important. We worked with one town where they had one crossing point where you had to cross over train tracks and a river, and there were traffic lights there, and it was a real issue to get from one part of town to the other. And so whether a site was, or where a site was in relation to that one crossing point, was really super critical to them, and there was no way we were going to know that, but we added it to the matrix. And I can think of another town where commercial development was really limited, and so they really wanted to think about whether or not they were taking a potential commercial plot off the tax rolls, and didn't want to wanted to favor property that wasn't commercially zoned, and so that became part of the matrix. So there could be things that are really important to you that we just don't know about that should be taken into account as we're ranking the sites, and just let us know that.
Yeah, so it's not a hard read, and you'll get, it's really best to worst at each of those categories,
Under the site visit plan?
But it's, I have a Title 11 existing tree cover, we have plenty of sites where, people are really upset when you're neutering a tree, a forest, because of the site, and sometimes it's not possible not to do it, but it becomes a big issue. So, there's all kinds of categories, from some that are more subtle. So take a peek at that. That's next on the big thing, because when we're done with this, we'll have the 2 sites we're going to look at, and ultimately the third site. So.
And are we squared away with the morning of the 27th? Is that certain at this time?
Yes, we are. I did hear back from the environmental engineer that's coming. She's good with starting in your order. Christina, when I sent that, I don't know if I missed that you didn't get that, or I assumed you got it, and I apologize for not pointing it out.
It was my mistake, as I said, because 2 emails came in and I only read Chris's response. I did not realize that she was responding to one that you had sent. Yours did not come in as a new email to me.
Oh, okay.
So it was my mistake for not reading upwards.
Okay. Well, hopefully, I mean, they've already done some work that they do from their office, so they're already coming in hopefully with some information prepared for that. And then, you know, she walks us. I don't, you know, like I've been on sidewalks with people. She's got work to do. You know, she's going to be looking at things. She's an environmental, so she's going to be looking for specific things. She's going to be looking at topography. She's going to be looking at all the basics. And she has this matrix as well. So hopefully, you know, they're going to be looking at it with an eye to some of this too. And I'll certainly try to chat with her before Wednesday and just make sure she's all set. But yes, it seems to be set for Wednesday, so we'll see what happens.
At 9 a.m. starting.
9 a.m.
And
yeah.
is she coming from Northampton?
I don't know where she's coming from,
Okay.
honestly, but I imagine she's from out there. I don't
From
know.
somewhere around here?
I'll get you her cell phone number too,
Okay.
so you'll have that.
And now,
Alrighty.
as you know, we don't yet have the permission from one landowner, from the landowner of 79 Clark Street. If that does
Okay.
not come through, is there some amount of work that she can do from the road?
Yeah.
Yeah, she said she photographed whatever she could and, you know, do what she could from it. So, yeah, she said she'll do something.
Thank you.
So, is it just getting in touch with them, or do you sense that they're not willing to be a part of this?
Yeah, this is Chris. So from the select board point of view, we've written out to the landowners and asked permission to be on the site. This particular site is owned by a company and their headquarters is not in Southampton. So they have to go through their corporate headquarters. So we've dealt with the local guy, you know, who's basically their real estate agent, if you will. The property's for sale. I think it's 12 acres, something like that. It's large, large spot. And so we've dealt with a real estate agent as our way to communicate, and he has to go back to corporate headquarters to get any permissions. And as of, I sent out a note a week ago, and as of today, he didn't have any response. So we may just have to do what we can do without getting on the property. And frankly, it may be a cornfield right now too, so I'm not sure what we can see, as a matter of fact, now that I think about that. But yeah, but the Zero College Highway is fine, and I would just suggest we meet there, or start there, because the landowner said that was fine at 9 o'clock on the 27th, which is Wednesday rather than Tuesday.
Right.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll make contact with her, and then I'll make sure, I mean, if there's she has any comments or things. I think she did set her cell phone number already, so I'll make sure you'll have that.
And the idea is to try and do all three in one day, is that right?
Oh, yeah. Definitely. And it's not, I mean, you know, maybe 12 acres, but, you know, she's probably not going to walk 12 acres, you know, depending, you know, she might, but, you know, I assume she has a process for walking. That's, you know, just for the information she needs for this level, and then they do their work behind. So she's probably already coming to look at certain features, perhaps. I'm guessing. She's prepared to look at certain things and be responsive to those.
Yeah.
So,
and I know we're doing our own analysis, you know, through your associates, but she's got access to the previous analysis that was done for the senior center? Okay.
Yes.
So in case she can't get too far in terms of really seeing much, she's got at least some basic information to work with. Okay.
Yeah, is the property right next to 79, is that the senior center property?
The 89 is the desired place for the senior center, correct?
Okay. And do they own the same property, or is that another owner?
Different owner.
Okay.
Does that make a difference? Being right next door, because that owner is local. Are they going to be so different that she's got to look at 79, not just 89? Do you know what I'm saying? Because they're right next to each other?
They could be very, very different.
Yeah, they're different.
You don't know.
Okay.
You don't know.
We did a project for a police station, and they built a building on one side of it and had standard foundations. We had caissons on our site.
There was a city lot that had been subdivided. The city gave part of it to a developer to build substance abuse housing, and yeah, they gave away the good lot. And they were left with a lot with terrible soils and, didn't know that that was the case until we started digging.
Yeah,
Okay.
so and they were right next, literally within feet of each other, so you never know. Okay, so that's next, and then the only two other slides that we can go back to talk about program is your town efforts again, to reviewing from the neighboring towns, and we can help you escalate, give you ideas of escalation and the size of the building again. This is something that comes up, and these are the same slides I showed you last time. I didn't change it, but it hasn't changed. But, understanding what a hard construction soft costs and the development of the project are, because they are very different in different towns. And then being able to talk about it, and then the community outreach, making sure, you want to get word out that this is happening. Again, of course, any opportunity you can. And making sure that you're prepared to answer the questions that people have. I mean, this tonight's meeting will get out there, square footage, whatever, and you're going to have to be prepared to answer, the process that you're doing. So that's the end of my my thing tonight. I mean, I said to Amy, programming and schedules and matrices are not the most exciting topics, but they are certainly the most critical early on efforts is to do this programming and get the program, back up one more to the program, but to ask you what you would like us to do at this point. Do you want us to make it? I would like the departments to look at the numbers one more time and look at them with that critical eye of, did we over-plan anything or whatever? And then two, do you want us to also take a look at skinning it down a few rooms here and there, and maybe between the three of us, we to cut that 6,800 down, even if it's 500 feet or 1,000 feet, it adds up in the end, and so I look for your guidance on this one. And then I'm gonna get out of the PowerPoint so I can actually see people, because I'm not nothing size, and I'm gonna stop sharing here and ask you what you're thinking here.
Well, we would like you to send that PowerPoint to Lisa.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Janet, I would propose that, just what you said, I think, if you could review it, and myself and the fire chief review it, then myself and the fire chief can meet at the committee meeting, and the entire committee can review it before we reach out again with
Okay.
I mean, does that sound like a plan?
So.
I first would like to discuss it with the committee prior to, having that next meeting, relatively, providing us with the information that we came up with. I suspect we're probably going to have very similar outcomes, really, I do, based on but...
Yeah, the spaces are pretty much what you asked for, and I don't think, and like I said, and I didn't think you asked for anything extraordinary at all, This is modern police station, a modern fire station. These are spaces that are in them, and the question is, is there any way of accommodating and making it a little bit smaller, so we just we've done that square footage, and then that preparation for the money issue is it's huge, getting ready for it and being prepared, and again, our focus in the design will certainly be to to be aware of the cost of it, and if there's things that we can do. Sometimes when you pick a programming number, we miraculously come up with an efficient plan that cuts that square footage down somewhat, and that's what our hope will be, that we come up with a plan that is so wildly efficient that we cut some square footage off simply by the way the plan lays out. Other times it comes closer to this target, amazing it, but so again, we'll take a look. And we'll put our thoughts together and see what we can, if we see anything. And if Amy and I come up with something quickly, we'll send that to you right away. We won't wait and say, so you're looking at something that we say, why don't you look at this? Why don't you look at this case? So that you already know that. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so what's our next? We had something for October 5th.
No, 2nd. So we will be meeting with, will you be in the next meeting on October 2nd with Pear? Is Pear going to be present, or is it, or Par? Or is it you?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think they'll just provide, Par will just provide information to us, and we'll be able to interpret. And, if we have another person coming into a matrix conversation, just add more voices to it. But they'll already tell us what they think about the categories, and I'll make sure that we have a conversation. So that meeting will be really that matrix. Let's focus on what that is, and let's, see if we can figure out what the sites are right away. And then we can, move on from there. And, it could be that, one site just rises to the top and, it's so clear, but we don't know that yet, so we'll have to wait and see what happens after it. And then, and those two things will work together eventually. Once we have the square footage number work and we have a staff member ready to start the diagrams and get that piece together, but I don't want them to start until we know the square footage, and then they'll start putting the pieces together for us under direction. And he's ready when we're ready, sort of thing. So, and that's the next step. This is a really critical time for you folks. You've got to make a lot of decisions right now, and they're hard decisions to make, no doubt. So.
All right, so I think we have tied it up for today, pretty much. I think we all need time to digest this.
Oh yeah, that's a lot.
We'll just plan on meeting with you again next Monday, October 2nd.
Yes.
At 4:30.
Yes.
With the backup, if we need to run over to another meeting, it will be on October 5th.
Yes, correct. Correct. And if something goes haywire in the next few days on anybody's part, we'll do what we have. And I will get you tomorrow, first thing I'll get you the program, and I'll get you that matrix sheet too. And then you can take a look at that too. Everybody can look at it. And usually there's not tons of adjustments to the matrix. It's usually the scoring numbers that people want to play with. Environmental people want their numbers to be higher in their categories, and other people want numbers to be higher in their categories. And just, we have to be the arbitrator of that and say, no, you can't really put 50% of the numbers in environmental. You gotta mix it around the whole board. So I've been looking at a bunch of other matrices we do for the points, and they're all different, but I think they're fair right now, but they definitely can be adjusted, and they should be adjusted if they don't make sense to you. So, and if you have anything to add to that, and it'll be a working session. Someone scoring, and then somebody. One time I remember very specifically the account administrator, who was part of the committee, just as Ed is part of this, simply said after the first round, she said, okay, someone has to say the number is going to be 6. That will be me. And she let everybody discuss, and then she said the number will be 6, or the number will be 4. And they all accepted that. And so that's one thing I would recommend, that you have somebody who is going to be that person who makes that final decision. In other towns, everybody is like, yeah, not a problem. Some people actually score them in advance, as a group, and they come in and they already know what they want to do. But we all go through it because, again, this is how you weigh it and how you discuss it. Okay?
All right.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Good, thanks.
Okay. Great, folks. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll talk soon. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.
All right, well,
So who else is going to be planning on coming to the site for the Wednesday? I guess that's like part of the question too, right?
I will make every effort to. Right now, things are very busy in my world, but I'll make a point of trying to be there.
I cannot be there. I'm out of town.
Okay. I wasn't planning on being
You're tied up.
Well, I'm working. Every time I do something in the middle of the day, I'm not working.
well, yeah.
As of right now, my schedule shows that I can make it, but that changes sometimes.
What kinds of questions would require somebody from the committee at that time? Can you
I think
imagine?
it's more of also just relating back to the committee,
Yeah.
you know, some of their comments and their observations.
Just understanding the observations and discussion. that might have happened. I mean, I wasn't part of the senior center tour, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right, they might go to, let's say, the one on Clark Street and say, absolutely, this is too late, right? So that would be a good piece of information for somebody to be able to
Yeah.
relate back to the committee
Yeah.
right away.
But yes,
Or-
but they'll be bringing that
Yeah.
up to the executive too, so it'll be.
I mean, I think we will, I really highly doubt that we will get any permission to be on 79 o'clock
Yeah.
before Wednesday.
That's
I-
really
I don't
interesting.
think
If
it's
the
gonna happen.
realtor, it's like, are they representing somebody with a house for sale and they have the key to let you in the house? This isn't a house, this is a piece of property.
Property, I mean,
Yeah.
it's private property.
Well,
I'll tell you,
I mean,
at that corner.
Even last time for the senior center, it took over 2 weeks to
Yeah.
get it.
And they did eventually get
They
permission?
did, but they walked it from Marmon Keystone area. I think
Yeah.
they came in sideways or something from what I heard. I remember.
Yeah.
And it is a cornfield right now? Who's planting the corn?
I assume it's Fletcher's.
It is.
So would anybody entertain a motion to try to maybe skip some of this so we can get on with our nights, getting kind of late as far as. I think there's certain things we can hold off on, such as the review of the minutes even,
Sure.
yes?
Yeah, I agree, let's,
So one, we want to.
I move that we defer the minutes to a future meeting.
All right, as well as any of the agendas, topics?
Oh, can we do a minutes by net? Can we go point by point and have a vote on that one?
Sure.
So I move that we defer the minutes. Second.
Second?
Sure, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody want to make a motion to, let's see, this is, the fourth item on the agenda, discuss additional public safety building committee responsibilities to complete feasibility study. Move that forward.
That's fine, unless, I'm not even prepared to discuss that.
Yes,
So
okay.
I move that we wait and talk about public safety building responsibilities, specifically the comparison of sites to a future meeting.
Okay.
Second.
As far as discuss public engagement plans, I'm still waiting on a response back from East Hampton Media, so I think we should probably wait on that as well.
I actually would like to talk a little bit about that. It doesn't
Okay.
have to be long, and I have I put together a draft, 2 pages actually. Ignore if it's a back side, because I put it on used sheets, with all the stuff that we could do. And we could talk about this in the future, but I want to at least present this to you, and there's probably other ideas, and I want the committee to become familiar with this and be able to talk about this in the future. And the other thing is, I would like very much, I think I threw this out another time, to propose that we bring together a subcommittee of people who are not present to engage the public, including some people who have children in the school system, who are younger, who, you know, I don't have anything but neighbors to connect with on that. And I just don't know how we can do that open meeting law. Can we have a subcommittee of this committee to engage the public rather than us? We got too much stuff on our plate.
They're not members of the committee, they're not officially a subcommittee.
So what would you call them? Is there such a...
Friends of.
Well, not Friends Up, because that's a fundraising one. These are just ideas.
Working group?
Can we have a working group that's...
I don't know.
Do you have, anybody have an opinion on this?
Mark, do you have one?
Yeah.
I already know some folks in town that are saying, we really need this and we want to help get the word out there, not on this committee. What can we call it? Do we need a motion? Can we just start
Well,
forming?
is there an idea of what we could call it? I mean, how would we associate other than a friends group, which are loosely connected on
You told me
Other
once the
committees.
Friends group had to be 501c3, so that's
If they're gonna do a fundraiser,
no fundraising.
Yeah, they're gonna be, yeah.
you're gonna need to put down in writing what you're thinking and send it to me.
Yeah.
Because-
It might be a working group if any.
Because at this point, I might even, I mean, do they become a PAC? I don't know.
I
So
called them
they're
an
all-
engagement group. They're
Yeah,
next
there are
level.
all kinds of different tentacles to this, so I would really need to,
Sorry, okay, then I'll put it in writing and then
Yeah.
we'll be able to bring it up at the next meeting,
Yeah.
okay.
This is great though, Cindy, thank you for doing
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah, it's a
very
lot of
helpful.
work.
It kind of gives us a checklist now.
Okay.
We don't have anything from East Hampton Media yet? They haven't responded to us?
I sent an email last week and I haven't heard yet.
Because we will be meeting with them for the next 2 meetings and accomplishing nothing on our agenda, what about the idea of meeting at 4 o'clock on October 2nd and tidying up some of our own, catching up a bit on our own tasks and then meeting with them? Because we're never going to have time at the end.
Especially with this.
Yeah,
stuff.
It's just a suggestion.
I agree. There's no way that we could squeeze I mean,
And
her presentation
business-
style is very
Yeah,
encompassing.
I frankly, Amy is so much clearer. I would really like
We
her
need to-
please get rid of those headsets. I swear that is the problem.
And, well, it's partially the way her voice is
Well,
down.
her voice is down, she goes very fast as well, too. So it's chart, very, very difficult to hear and follow, I think. So, I don't know, we'll have to see how we can do that in the future, but certainly Amy's presentation was easier to hear. But I would be in favor of meeting at 4. I agree, I think we wouldn't have time to add anything on at the end, so we need to plan this
We
out.
could clear up a few minutes. We could.
Yeah.
And,
I agree.
Get a half an hour earlier and at least get a couple of our own internal business stuff done.
Anybody want to
make that
Make a motion?
I make a motion that for the October 2nd meeting, we begin at 4 o'clock to attend to internal business and then meet with Amy and Jenny at 4.
Okay.
second?
Okay, I second it.
All in favor?
Now, do you think also that since there is an October 5th meeting, that we could indeed set the 6 o'clock hour as the cutoff time for them or not?
I don't know if we should, because we're paying a lot of money for those meetings, and the more we get out of it, and I realize that today went busy, but there might be a point where we need more information from them, and I
Okay.
wouldn't want to set that time, right?
Very good, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I think so. This could at least get us started, but this is a good checklist to start looking at and figuring out what we can do.
Any other matters on discussing public engagement plans?
Not for now.
All
Thank
right.
you, Cindy.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Any other business which must come before this committee?
No,
I see none. And just for a matter of technicality, I skipped open time for the public. There was no members of the public at this meeting. That's a start.
Well, your appointment to this committee is at tomorrow's night select board meeting, am I right? So
Yeah.
he's still a member of the public. We love you, but you're a member of the public.
He was not here at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay.
that's true. You're clear on that.
A motion to,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Okay.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It is 6:30.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.